that the Supreme Court should roughly resemble the racial diversity of the country?
The ABA does not believe that quotas are appropriate. It is
According to the ABA's mission statement on its website, it states that judges, it increases the quality of our judicial system whenever judges resemble the vast racial diversity of our society. So would you say that it's helpful, it's beneficial if our Supreme Court resembles the racial diversity of America?
The real issue in this exchange is not whether race and gender were factors in Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination. President Biden openly said he intended to nominate a black woman. That fact is undisputed. The more difficult question is what that actually proves. But the clip does not discuss Jackson's extensive qualifications. Harvard Law graduate, Supreme Court clerk, federal public defender, member of the U.S. Sentencing Commission, and federal judge. The ABA's Standing Committee on the Federal Judiciary ultimately rated her well qualified. Gill's argument has a legitimate foundation. Biden did establish a race and gender condition for the pool of potential nominees. That was a clear policy choice. But that alone does not prove Jackson was unqualified or selected solely because of her race. The available evidence shows both a demographic commitment and a highly accomplished legal resume. The strongest counterargument is that representation can be considered when choosing among multiple highly qualified candidates, and selecting a black woman does not automatically mean lowering standards. So the debate is ultimately about whether race-conscious selection promotes broader representation, or unfairly excludes other qualified candidates. The evidence proves race was a factor. It does not prove race was the only factor. Where do you stand? And don't forget to subscribe for more sharp commentary.
All right. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions. And thank you to all of the witnesses, again, for taking the time to come before this hearing, which I think is incredibly important. Ms. Banky, according to the ABA's website, quote, all of us have implicit biases. Would you agree with that statement?
The ABA believes that diversity, equity, and inclusion improves the practice.
Would you agree with the statement that, quote, all of us have implicit biases from the ABA's website?
The ABA believes that diversity in all of its
Is that a
realms
yes?
is
Can
important.
I take that? It's a yes or no question. Do you believe that all of us have implicit biases, as your website says?
The ABA looks to remove barriers, and we examine.
That's not my question, ma'am. Do you believe that all of us have implicit biases?
I've expressed what the ABA is doing.
That is the ABA's position, as expressed by their website. Against which groups do you have implicit biases?
The ABA believes that it's important to always explore.
Are you going to filibuster? Because it doesn't make you sound very good. I'm going to ask you again, against which groups do you have implicit biases?
It's important to always examine everyone's point of view and where they may need to consider.
It is. What about your point of view?
I am here as the president of the American Bar Association.
And I'm asking you what your implicit biases are.
The ABA as an entity.
Have you reflected on your implicit biases?
I think about how I operate
What are they?
in the world constantly.
Would you like to explain to us what they are?
I am here speaking on behalf of the ABA and the
All right,
ABA's.
we're going to move on. Was race a factor in Ketanji Brown Jackson's Supreme Court nomination?
I have no idea how that process works. I'm a real estate lawyer.
President Biden stated, quote, I've made no decision except one, and that's that person will be the first black woman ever nominated to the United States Supreme Court. So I think it's fair to say that race was and gender were factors in that nomination process. Wouldn't you agree?
You would have to have a conversation.
He explicitly stated that, so I think it's fair to say. I mean, you're a lawyer. I think that's fair to say. Do you think that it's just or righteous that Joe Biden explicitly excluded black men in the nomination process for the Supreme Court vacancy?
The ABA does not support discrimination of any sort.
So you don't think that it was proper for Joe Biden to exclude every group other than black women in deciding who should fill that Supreme Court vacancy? Is that your testimony?
The ABA relishes diversity, equity, and
right,
inclusion.
But is it acceptable for Joe Biden to exclude black men in the nomination pool for the Supreme Court?
The ABA never supports discrimination.
That's good to hear. And you believe, I think, tell me if that the Supreme Court should roughly resemble the racial diversity of the country?
The ABA does not believe that quotas are appropriate. It is
According to the ABA's mission statement on its website, It states that judges, it increases the quality of our judicial system whenever judges resemble the vast racial diversity of our society. So would you say that it's helpful, it's beneficial if our Supreme Court resembles the racial diversity of America?
The ABA believes that diversity in all of its forms is important. We
So it
want
is a
people to
good
bring
thing.
all of who they are, whether they be from small practice or
Diversity,
large practice.
can you define diversity here? You want it to, should the Supreme Court resemble America's racial makeup, roughly? It's a yes or no question.
The ABA does not support quotas.
I'm not asking about quotas. I'm asking if it should roughly resemble America's racial makeup.
It should represent all of what people are.
Of
and
what
all
people
their
are, okay. So
experiences.
right now, there's about two of nine of Supreme Court justices are black. That's about 22% of the Supreme Court. According to your testimony, about 13% of America's population is black. If the Supreme Court should roughly resemble America's demographic makeup, as the ABA states is proper, in your opinion, regardless of qualifications, should the Senate refuse to confirm a third black Supreme Court justice?
The ABA supports and encourages diversity in all of its forms.
That wasn't my question. My question was, if a Supreme Court vacancy opens up, should the Senate refuse to confirm a third black Supreme Court nominee based on his race or her race?
The ABA does not support quotas, and so...
The ABA does support some sort of, and hopefully we'll get into that. The ABA does support making sure the ethnic makeup has a specific amount. But my time is up, so we will move on. And with that, I yield.